Yeah, hello guys, Cloudie here, checking in from the America server, and in today's video we are gonna be looking at this beautiful lady on the screen who is no other than the angel Aselica, one of the magic tanks in 킹스레이드, and who has recently received a balance adjustment which kind of brought her back from the dead. So we are gonna look at her, what she's all about. Going out from here, this is, by the way, this is her fallen skin, which I kind of like more than the normal blonde blue-eyed one. Maybe it's because actually the dark hair and the red eyes, which if you look at my preferred hero section, might be a theme there. But okay, let's see what Aselica is all about, what she can do, and why she is good now. So her initial purpose in the game was to provide physical defense to magic teams, and she was one of the very few characters who brought cooldown reduction to your attackers, but sadly she didn't really provide too much amp beyond that cooldown reduction part, and so our survival becomes less and less of an issue in scoring content. She slowly got phased out or replaced by Priscilla or Jane, who is like the go-to tank of magic teams nowadays, but with the recent balance adjustment she has become more useful again, so we will check what she can do now. As always, first we will check skills, then Transcendence perks, unique gears, normal gears, and then wherever she can be used with some stuff like that. So let's get right to it. Let's see what she does. First and foremost, her Sword of the Sun S1 skill is a relatively simple skill. It does some damage to an enemy and nearby enemies within range, inflicting stun for 5 seconds after increasing his own attack speed for 5 seconds. So this is a pretty basic skill, but the 5-second stun on a 9-second cooldown is actually pretty good, and the added speed ensures that her attack speed is pretty good, which is needed for her passive and her unique weapon. So this is quite good. It's basic, but it does the job, so not much to say about it. Let's see, the main skill of her is Blessing of the Sun, which is it is cast on your attacker or character with the highest attack, reducing the cooldown of all their skills by 20% and increasing attack by a flat number plus 8% of Aselica's physical defense, and damage dealt to non-hero enemies by 20% for 15 seconds. Now this is the new part, especially the non-hero damage, and this is a really big number. 20% non-hero damage is a lot. In comparison, Jane can give 15%, but she needs a 5-star unique weapon for that. So in comparison, you can actually get a lot of amp from her, non-hero damage amp, just by having her and applying her skill. Now if you check, 20 seconds cooldown and 15 seconds uptime is not too bad, but you can go around that with techno magic gears, or if you are doing content where you manual her, either for the skill cooldown reduction or because of the burst windows, then you don't need any reduction. But with TM gears you can get around this and have an actually close to 100% uptime, so that's quite decent. This is pretty much the main skill and why you would want to have her in a lot of teams. Not her only skill, but one of the main ones. Let's see, Judgment of the Sun. So this one is a very this is a lot of mana, 4 mana bars, mana orbs. Takes position and focuses to heal HP of nearby allies 8 times for a total of something plus a portion of her physical defense, and that's 12% of her physical defense, so that's not too bad. But of course you will not have like millions of physical depth, so it's like alright. And increase their physical defense by 52,000 for 10 seconds. So 20 seconds cooldown, 10 seconds uptime, that's alright ish. Yeah, whatever, but 52k physical defense is a lot. Like a lot of characters don't have that much in total, especially wizards. I'm looking at you, or priests, who are super squish. Enemies within range take a total of something damage over 8 times and have their magic defense reduced by a certain number. Now, one thing about this part is that this scales with her attack, but yeah, like on a tank you will usually not have monster amounts of attack, so I wouldn't bother with that too much. The other is the defense shred, which is a fixed number, and it's kind of rare these days. I don't even recall that many characters who do that nowadays. The problem is that the defense shred doesn't really work on a lot of scoring content. They just do not have their defense reduced, or they already have such a low defense like during the burst phases that this doesn't help. So that's why Aselica was not one of the favorite characters recently. At the end of casting, heals HP of all allies within range by a certain number and the percentage of her maximum HP, and deals some magic damage to enemies and knocks them down for 3 seconds. So this is like a sort of heal plus physical defense buff that you can do or use when you are expecting a big burst from a boss. Like we used to do this on the knockdown attack of Mountain Fortress World boss, but since then surviving that is not an issue, and Aselica is no longer needed for that. So yeah, this is not that important now. I like to use this skill in, for instance, Trial of Earth, where it helps her to, during the windmill attack, it helps her team to survive. Also, it does add some extra hits to the boss in that case. Now let's move on to her passive skill. Upon attacking, inflicts Curse of the Sun on the target for 10 seconds. Enemies with 10 stacks of Curse of the Sun will consume the stacks to take some magic damage. I guess this also scales with her attack, but isn't really relevant being a tank and all. Become inflicted with blind for 2 seconds, so that's an extra CC, not that much, but like whatever. And having their attack reduced by 30%. Also do note that she can actually apply this blind fairly often, like I think even without any attack speed she does this every 5 seconds or so. Having their attack reduced by 30% for 10 seconds. The 30% attack down is high. Klaus does like I think 20% baseline and then needs the perk to push it to 30%. Jane can do 35, but again she needs a 5-star unique weapon for this, while Aselica can do this baseline just from her skill alone. The downside is that she needs to hit the target 10 times to apply these stacks. So if you are like in a multi-target or multi-phase battle, or there are more enemies, then this will not be applied. So in that regard, she has ups and she has down, which is perfectly fine. Okay, upon using the skill, grants Blessing of the Angel. This is also the new part of the skill, to allies excluding self for 5 seconds. This reduces their physical damage taken by 15% and heals them by 0.1% of Aselica's max HP every second. Now this is a very slow number. It really is not something you will notice in my opinion, and as far as I can, and yeah, so I wouldn't really put too much weight on this part, but the 15% physical toughness is quite useful, especially in fights like say Siegfried, where your backline tends to be really squishy and tends to die, so this can be quite good there. Okay, so these are the skills. Let's see how these actually play into her talent perks. So let's look at the perks. This is one setup that I have used for a while. Of course, the basic tier 1 and 2 perks. Now let's start with her S1 Light, which gives 25% amp to her S1, and this is a 10-second uptime, so basically the uptime is higher than the cooldown of the skill, which is a decent amp for a basic skill like that. So I think if you are running a magic team, then this is perfectly fine to have. The other option is reduces cooldown by 2 seconds. I guess if you wanted more CC, you could consider this in some situations. I wouldn't really put too much emphasis on this one. I think the amp probably is better unless you are in a fight where it doesn't help. Let's move on. S2. So this is her main skill, the most popular skill, I guess. The light perk increases the mana cost by 1 and grants the effect to 2 allies with the highest attack. So now the cooldown reduction, the attack bonus, and the non-hero damage will be applied to 2 targets instead of 1, which can be quite useful in some situations. It may or may not be needed depending on the fight. I have this on now because I'm not even sure where I was using her last, but yeah. The other option is also pretty good. Dispels negative effects from self upon use and dispels negative effects from the target of the skill. So this means that this is a cleanse on herself and a cleanse on the recipient of the S2 buff. I often use this perk when I'm running Trial of Earth because it gives an extra cleanse, usually the boomerang skill, which is a stun, knockback, and also applies bleeds, and sometimes your DPS will die to that. So using this skill during that is pretty nice, and it will also cleanse the bleed stacks from Aselica, so she will be a lot less likely to actually die on you. Okay, so you can kind of choose between these two depending on what you're running and what is needed. Judgment of the Sun reduces mana cost by 1. Well, yeah, I guess if you have mana issues in some content, maybe, but this isn't really that interesting here. The other is upon use dispels negative effects from self. So this gives her an extra cleanse, which could be good again in something like Trial of Earth, maybe, if you wanted to, but I think there are better perks that you can pick. Even if you go for 98 TP points, then you could just pick up Battle Cry, or you could pick up Shield of Protection for more dodge. So I think I wouldn't really pick this one. I would, if I wanted more cleansing on herself, I would go with this. But okay, and then her S4, so Blessing of the Angel becomes irremovable. So this is the P damage reduction and the healing. I don't know where this would be useful. Maybe Escalon, maybe maybe Small Shock Me, Devourer Shock Me, where the waves, the totems in the waves dispel your highest attacker, and so the toughness buff would stay on them more often. I don't know. So this is I'm not sure where I would use. The other option is activates at 7 stacks of Curse of the Sun. So instead of 10 hits, she only needs 7 now to apply her debuff. Based on my testings on the target dummy, she can keep up her debuff on a single target indefinitely. So she doesn't need this perk at all. It might be useful again if you are doing multi-phase battles, like maybe you were using her in Eclipse and you want to apply the attack reduction and stuff like that, then it might be good there, or if there are many enemies that she will be switching around and she needs this perk. But again, I wouldn't really consider this terribly useful for her, so I personally do not use this myself. And then one of my favorite perks, and this is one of her older perks actually, at the beginning of the first battle increases physical defense of the ally with the highest attack by 20% of self's physical defense, and this is irremovable. So yeah, 20% physical def buff to your highest attacker, and this is just applied passively and cannot be removed. This helped me so much in Trial of Earth because it made my DPS so much tankier. When I was running that in the old days, my Aselica had like 200k physical defense on sheet, so this added like so much to my attacker, and this helped running my Taily with higher defense too, because with the buff from Aselica, my DPS could easily suppress Taily, even if she also had like some PDEF gear. So that just made the run so much smoother. I really do love this perk. So if you are going up against physical damage, then I would say it's a must-have. Unless surviving really is not an issue, then you can go for something else, like again Battle Cry or the extra block chance, or yeah, she doesn't really have anything else that applies here. So you can take her tier 5 light. Again, physical contents, this might actually be better than having 200 block, because it also gives 200 P block. So on physical content, you might go for this for more defense, HP, and P block. If she's like a general tank in, say, Eclipse, then this might be better for you. It's kind of up to the content that you are running. So those are the perks. Let's see how her unique gears are actually, which one you should be getting, how they scale, and which one we should be looking at. So starting off with her unique weapon, let's see how this looks like. Attacking, let's start with the 0 start, okay? 0 star. Attacking the enemy with 5 normal attacks increases magic damage that they take by 20% for 10 seconds and inflicts stun for 0.5 seconds. The M damage boost is irremovable. And then this scales the magic damage part all the way up to 50%. So yeah, her amp scales with her unique weapon. If you have the extra selectors or you get it randomly, then that's nice. Of course, when you're min-maxing, all the amp can help, but she can do her main job without this eventually. So 20% baseline is not too bad. You can just stick to that if you want to do so. Otherwise, you can go all the way to 50%. This is from randoms, 3 star, and I think I have some fail bonus already. Let's check her unique treasures. The most generic one would be her S4, which increases the duration of the blind by 1 second, so this makes it 3 seconds. And upon activation, targets take 10% increased magic damage for 10 seconds. Now she doesn't really have a problem with applying this over and over, and should you max this one out, this goes up to 25%. Now, is 25% a lot? No, not really. Wouldn't necessarily invest in a unique treasure just for the amp itself, but if you want her to be more tanky, have more HP, then probably this is the one that you want to build. There are some other options that you could consider, namely the S2, Bracelet of the Sun, UT, which changes Blessing of the Sun, so reduces the mana cost, which is not that big, and reduces the target, so reduces the physical damage taken by the target by 10% for 10 seconds. Now the uptime on this is not too high. Remember, this is a 20-second cooldown skill, but you can get like a 25% physical toughness out of it, which is not too bad. If survival is really an issue for 1 or 2 characters in a fight, maybe Siegfried comes to mind, where I would consider using this perhaps, or maybe a challenge raid in the future. Yeah, it's an option. Again, I wouldn't necessarily go ham on either of these, but this can be an option in certain fights. Moving on to the other one, so this is her S1. Dispels all positive effects from enemies within range and recovers own mana by 200 something per hit. So this goes from 200 all the way to 500. Where would you want Aselica to be dispelling? Honestly, the only thing I can think of is if you were to try and use her in PvP. Not gonna lie, I have seen her in some situations, and technically she can have a cleanse for 2 people, provides physical defense, can dispel, so it might even work in some cases, but yeah, it would make you at least a lot tankier against physical attackers, especially those that do not ignore defense, so it might be an option. But yeah, this is definitely not one of her main UTs. And then her oldest UT is skill 3, so while Judgment of the Sun is in use, gains immunity to CC. Additionally, increases the physical defense boost and defense reduction by 20%, and then this goes up to 50%. So this was like a base 50k or so during the cost, and then this is increased by 50%, and also the shed is increased. So not too bad, but I would say it's not really her main unique treasure either. I have it around as a stat stick. So those are the unique gears themselves that she has. Let's see how her soul weapon actually looks like and what it does. So, manage soul weapon, let's see. So, summons the soul of Solar Halo Ignatius, increasing all allies' attack and physical defense by 30% and 60%. So, 30% attack, 60% defense for 10 seconds. Afterwards, attacks the target and enemies nearby within a small range 20 times, so that's a multi-hit skill, that's not too bad. Dealing with a total of some damage. Each hit inflicts Judgment of Ignatius, increasing magic damage the target takes by 2% for 5 seconds, and this can be stacked up to 20 times. So that's a 40% magic damage amp there. But yeah, it takes a little while to actually stack up. Looking at her advancement phase 1, also this has a cooldown of 20 seconds and you need to cast skills 5 times, so 5 skill casts is quite a while. It may take you a while to get there. At least her S1 can charge this super fast. It has a lot of charges, which is a good thing. Now looking at her advancement phase 1, increases the duration by 5 seconds and additionally reduces magic defense by 2% per stack of the Judgment of Ignatius. So yeah, that's 40% magic defense shed. That's not too bad at all, provided you can use it and it works on the given content. So yeah, there is that, but yeah, it's not too bad. It's not too great. The good part about it is the increased time in duration for this debuff, which makes your life so much easier, and somebody's killing guild raids, I guess. Let's see, advancement phase 2 changes the magic damage boost effect to 3% and reduces physical damage all allies take by 60% for the duration of skill. Now this is curious because the 3% boost makes this a 60% boost now, and together with her unique weapon and her S1 perk and her UT4, this should bring her total amp to, I believe, around 160, which is quite close to what Jane does eventually. It's a bit more situational. Jane applies it a bit faster and easier, I guess. And she can do it in AoE, while Aselica is more single target focused, but it's definitely interesting. Now the other is that it's a 60% physical damage reduction, which can be quite nice, I believe. Yeah, in certain situations where you are taking physical damage. So that's all her unique stuff. Let's see how you want to actually gear her. For Technomagic sets, you would most likely go with the Siegfried set, because it increases all allies defense and attack by 5%. So this is the generic PvE TM set that you take. Now, which skills to take on the TM pieces is kind of dependent on what you are running and which role she is in. If you are running her in an auto position, or like you are farming something, or she's just not on your main team and you don't care really about when the cooldown reduction happens, then you can go with these reduces cooldown of second skill by 10% every 10 seconds. I have 3 of these equipped, and with 3 the uptime of her S2 becomes almost permanent. There is like a minimal downtime when she recasts it, or if the RNG just doesn't favor the reduction of the cooldown, but it's very minimal. So with 3 of those lines she can pretty much keep up her S2 buff all the time, which is a lot of DPS and kind of useful. This would be something I would consider, for instance, in Arc Dim, where she is quite good. Other than that, you kind of have 2 options. One is that you go ham on defense, where this would be probably the best line to have. Reduces attack by 20%, but increases all defense by 50%. So this gives her a massive defense boost, and this would help you to survive things more easily. And of course, because she has scaling with her physical defense, both in her S2 and in her tier 5 dark, this would make survival and both damage a lot better. Other option, of course, that you can still go with is the traditional either attack aura or crit damage aura that you can wear on her. That's also an option. I would, depending on how much damage she takes, I would consider either of those, again depending on the fight. For the stats themselves, well, physical defense, physical block, maybe physical dodge, and then HP as you see fit. Usually you want to have like 1k or more block at the least, and then you can focus on either defense or dodge or HP. Again, depends on the fight. Some fights ignore defense, in some fights you want more HP, or you can even go with dodge, like in say Eclipse, where it really works well. So those are the stats. Also one artifact that I really liked on her, but this is a world boss artifact, so you may or may not be able to get it. So this one gives a lot of physical defense. I think it starts at like 50%, and goes all the way to 100, but I wouldn't really try and start this up. If you get it like a base version, this can be pretty good. Otherwise, you can wear stuff like Golden Mask, or there is the lion statue that gives both block and defense, or just one of the buffing artifacts. It really, again, depends on the content. And then speaking of content, where would she be useful? Depending on how you can utilize her cooldown reset, she might be actually good in certain boss fights, like Mountain Fortress, for instance, where you have a short DPS burst window, and you might want to try to get more hits of your main DPS in that time frame. So that might be something you want to consider. So Mountain Fortress is one option. Other things that you might also consider are fights where you know that you will be taking a lot of physical damage, and you want either the extra defense or the extra toughness that she can provide. Siegfried comes to mind, where she made my runs a bit more interesting compared to Taili, definitely doing more damage, but sometimes I die before, especially my melee characters can be killed by Siegfried if they aren't the highest attacker. But yeah, she definitely works there too. Shock Me could be a thing, especially because the cooldown reduction is kinda nice, and the early stages do not ignore defense, while the boss hits himself does. But then the toughness that she can also provide can be of use, and she has a quite a decent amount of blind or CC, so that can be again quite useful. Where else would I use for? Eclipse might be decent, again cooldown reduction, non-hero damage. And as far as I have seen, Arcdim is a very interesting place for her, where she can, while her physical damage reduction doesn't really do much because she is on the magic side, but thanks to the non-hero damage and the cooldown reduction on the DPS, it can make the fight a lot faster. Do you remember that AMP does not work in Arcdim raids, so Jane's main bonus is not really active. If you have a high unique weapon Jane, then she will give you 15% non-hero damage. Aselica can give more than that. Plus, if you do not have that 5-star unique weapon Jane, then Aselica will also give you more attack down. In return, Jane does give some magic defense, so it kind of even out, but Aselica might be really good there. I have asked, for instance, Lex, who said that his Aselica made, for instance, running with Kibera quite interesting and a lot faster. So that's also an option you can consider. Again, she is really good against physical damage, buffing magic, but technically the cooldown reduction could be good. In this regard, her comparison to Priscilla reduces 30%, while Aselica does only 20%, but Aselica runs in the tank position, so you may or may not be better off with her. That depends on the fight and again what you are running. So I think this is all that we need to know about Aselica for now. Her recent balance patch really did bring her back from the dead, because once Klaus was buffed, it happened that even magic teams would rather run a Klaus instead of their own magic physical tank, magic damage, physical protection tank, which was Aselica. So she was kind of dead in the water, and this recent patch or rebalancing kind of brought her back. So good to see her back in some action. And yeah, I hope you guys can have some fun with her. Yeah, so this is my review of Aselica for now. If you have any questions or comments, leave them in the comment sections below. And this has been Cloudie for now. I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.